Stop for a moment. Think about the last time you stood in front of the mirror and really looked at your skin. You've been applying that cream every morning, the expensive one, the one that promised results in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And yet, those spots are still there. Maybe a few new ones have appeared, on your cheeks, your forehead, the back of your hands, and somewhere in the back of your mind, a question has probably crossed your mind. What if the cream isn't the solution? What if it's actually part of the problem? That isn't as unlikely as it sounds, because here's what most people are never told. Many of the most popular dark spot creams focus only on what you can see. They target the pigment that's already on the surface, while completely ignoring the process that's still happening underneath. And as long as that hidden process continues, the spots often come back, or new ones quietly appear. Today, I'm going to show you what that hidden process really is, why it becomes much more active after 60, and why understanding it may completely change the way you think about treating dark spots. So what is this hidden process? To understand it, you first need to understand how a dark spot actually forms. Your skin contains specialized cells called melanocytes. Their job is to produce melanin, the pigment that gives your skin its natural color. When you're younger, those cells work in a carefully balanced way. They produce just enough melanin and distribute it evenly across your skin. But after decades of sun exposure, something begins to change. Ultraviolet radiation gradually damages the DNA inside those melanocytes, and that damage activates an enzyme called tyrosinase. Think of tyrosinase as the master switch for melanin production. When your skin needs extra protection, the switch turns on. Once the danger is past, it turns off again. That's exactly how healthy skin is supposed to work. But after 40, 50, or 60 years of accumulated sun exposure, that switch doesn't always return to normal. Instead, it can remain unusually active, producing more melanin in the same small areas, day after day. That's what a dark spot really is, not a stain sitting on the surface of your skin, but an ongoing process taking place deep inside living cells. And here's the mistake many people make. They focus entirely on what's already visible, without asking why those cells are still producing extra pigment in the first place. If the process underneath never slows down, new pigment keeps forming. Even if the surface temporarily looks lighter, it's a little like repainting a wall without fixing the leak behind it. The paint may look beautiful for a while, but until the leak is repaired, the stain keeps coming back. And that brings us to something most people never think about. Could the cream you're using every morning be helping the surface, while quietly ignoring the process that's still happening underneath? So let's talk about the cream. Not because using one was a mistake. It wasn't. Most people use dark spot creams for one simple reason. They want their skin to look clearer. And many creams really do make dark spots appear lighter for a while. But here's what the label rarely explains. Most dark spot creams are designed to improve what you already see on the surface. They help reduce the appearance of existing pigment. They make the skin look brighter, smoother, more even. The problem is, the cells underneath may still be receiving the same signals to produce more melanin. So while the surface begins to improve, the process that created the spot may still be quietly continuing. But there's something else. Something most people never consider. Some active ingredients found in certain dark spot creams can temporarily irritate the outer layer of skin. And when skin experiences repeated irritation, even mild irritation, it may trigger some of the same protective responses the skin uses after sun damage, a signal to the melanocytes. Produce more pigment. Protect the skin. For some women, this means the cream that appears to be helping on the surface may be sending the wrong signals underneath. not because the cream is dangerous, but because skin after 60 is often more sensitive to irritation and more likely to respond with increased pigment production. That's why so many people feel trapped in the same cycle. The spots fade, then months later, they quietly return. Sometimes in the same place, sometimes darker than before. It's a little like drying the floor while the tap is still running. The floor looks dry for a while, but until you turn off the water, it keeps getting wet again. And that's why understanding what activates those pigment-producing cells may be far more important than simply choosing a stronger cream. So if the cream isn't solving the real problem, what does? The answer begins with understanding what your skin actually needs. Not stronger exfoliation, not harsher bleaching, but a completely different approach. Your melanocytes are not broken. And in most cases, they're not beyond repair. They've simply been responding to the same signals for years. What researchers have discovered is that certain compounds may help influence the biological pathways involved in melanin production, not by stripping away the surface, but by helping regulate the activity of the tyrosinase enzyme inside the melanocyte. Think of it like turning down a thermostat instead of opening a window. One approach only changes what you feel on the surface. The other helps address what's happening at the source. That's a fundamentally different strategy. Instead of focusing only on pigment that's already visible, it focuses on the process that's still creating new pigment underneath. And that's why researchers have become increasingly interested in several naturally derived compounds that have been studied for their potential to help support a healthier balance in melanin production. There are 5 that stand out. Each works through a slightly different mechanism, and together they offer a very different way of thinking about dark spots after 60. Let's start with number 5. Compound number 5, niacinamide. If you've been paying attention to skincare ingredients in recent years, you may have heard this name before, but most people don't fully understand what it actually does or why it matters specifically for skin after 60. Niacinamide is a form of vitamin B3. It's water-soluble, gentle on the skin, and it has one of the strongest bodies of clinical research behind it for improving uneven skin tone and hyperpigmentation. But here's what makes niacinamide different from many brightening ingredients. It doesn't work by bleaching the skin, and it doesn't work by stripping away the surface. It works by helping reduce the transfer of melanin. Here's what that means. Even when tyrosinase is overactive, even when the melanocyte is producing excess pigment, that pigment still has to travel. It moves from the melanocyte where it's made to the surrounding skin cells where it becomes visible. Niacinamide helps slow that transfer. Think of it like stopping a delivery truck before it reaches your house. The factory may still be running, but far fewer packages reach their destination. A landmark clinical trial published in the British Journal of Dermatology found that a 4% niacinamide cream applied twice daily produced a significant reduction in hyperpigmentation after 8 weeks. And there's something else that makes niacinamide particularly valuable after 60. As skin ages, its protective barrier naturally becomes weaker. Niacinamide helps strengthen that barrier by supporting the production of ceramides, the natural lipids that help hold skin cells together. A stronger skin barrier means less irritation, less sensitivity, and potentially less of the repeated inflammation that can continue stimulating excess pigment production. In other words, niacinamide doesn't just help improve the appearance of existing dark spots. It may also help reduce one of the triggers. That keeps new ones forming over time. Compound number 4, Kojic acid. Now here's something that may surprise you. Kojic acid is a naturally derived compound. It comes from a fermentation process. Specifically, it's produced by certain fungi. the same microorganisms traditionally used to ferment foods like sak, soy sauce, and miso. That's right. One of the most extensively studied naturally derived ingredients for hyperpigmentation comes from a process that has been used in food production for centuries. But what makes Kojic acid different from niacinamide is how it works. Niacinamide helps reduce the transfer of melanin to the surface. Kojic acid works one step earlier. It acts directly on the tyrosinase enzyme itself. Remember the master switch we talked about? The one that drives melanin production? Kojic acid helps reduce that enzyme's activity. It does this by binding to copper, a mineral the tyrosinase depends on to function normally. Without enough available copper, the enzyme becomes much less efficient at producing melanin. Think of it like removing the spark plugs from an engine. The engine is still there, but it can no longer perform at full power. Several clinical studies have shown that Kojic acid can significantly improve hyperpigmentation, and in some studies, its effects have been comparable to other well-established depigmenting treatments. One reason many researchers find it especially interesting is that it offers an alternative approach without relying on long-term hydroquinone use. Hydroquinone can be very effective, but prolonged or inappropriate use has been associated with unwanted side effects, including a rare condition called exogenous ochronosis. Kojic acid has its own limitations, and it can still irritate sensitive skin in some people. But when it's formulated appropriately, clinical research supports its role as an effective option for improving uneven pigmentation. A comprehensive review published in the journal Cosmetics in 2022 looked at decades of research on Kojic acid and concluded that it has meaningful potential for improving age spots, post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, and uneven skin tone. The review also highlighted something important. When Kojic acid is combined with other well-studied brightening ingredients, the results are often greater than using a single ingredient alone, because you're influencing pigment production through more than one biological pathway. And that brings us to compound number 3, one that many people have never heard of, but which researchers are becoming increasingly interested in for stubborn pigmentation after 60. Compound number 3, tranexamic acid. This may be the least familiar name on this list, but for stubborn pigmentation, the kind that has resisted everything else you've tried, it may also be one of the most interesting. Tranexamic acid has been used in medicine for decades. It was originally developed to help reduce excessive bleeding during surgery. But in recent years, researchers discovered something unexpected. When applied to the skin, it helps improve hyperpigmentation through an entirely different biological pathway than the compounds we've discussed so far. Here's how. Your melanocytes don't work alone. They're constantly communicating with the surrounding skin cells. And one of the signals they receive is influenced by an enzyme called plasmin. Plasmin plays several important roles in the body, but it can also contribute to signaling that encourages melanocytes to produce more pigment. Ultraviolet exposure can increase this signaling. Inflammation can increase it too. And after decades of accumulated sun damage, that communication pathway may remain more active than it should be. Tranexamic acid helps reduce that signaling. It interrupts part of the conversation between damaged skin cells and the melanocytes beneath them. Think of it like intercepting a letter before it reaches its destination. Much less of the message telling the melanocyte to produce extra pigment gets through. A major review published in Clinical Cosmetic and Investigational Dermatology summarized the evidence on tranexamic acid for hyperpigmentation. Multiple clinical studies have shown that topical tranexamic acid can significantly improve the appearance of melasma and other forms of hyperpigmentation. But what makes tranexamic acid especially interesting is how well it complements the ingredients we've already discussed. Niacinamide helps reduce melanin transfer. Kojic acid helps reduce tyrosinase activity. And tranexamic acid helps calm one of the inflammatory signaling pathways that can stimulate pigment production. Together, They support healthier pigmentation through three completely different mechanisms. And that brings us to compound number 2, one of the best-known antioxidants in skincare, but one that most people still misunderstand. Compound number 2, vitamin C. I know what you might be thinking. Everyone talks about vitamin C. I've heard about vitamin C for years, and you're right. It's one of the most widely discussed ingredients in skincare. But here's what most people never hear. Many people use vitamin C for dark spots, without realizing that how it's formulated makes an enormous difference. Here's why. Vitamin C is naturally unstable. When it's repeatedly exposed to light, air, or heat, it gradually oxidizes, and once that happens, it may no longer deliver the benefits you're expecting. That means the vitamin C serum that's been sitting on your bathroom shelf, exposed to light every morning, may not be as effective as it once was. The form matters, the concentration matters, the packaging matters, and the pH matters. When vitamin C is formulated correctly, particularly L-ascorbic acid at concentrations between 10 and 20%, with an appropriately acidic pH and stored in airtight, opaque packaging, it becomes one of the best studied ingredients for improving hyperpigmentation. Here's why. First, it's a powerful antioxidant. It helps neutralize free radicals generated by ultraviolet exposure before they contribute to the biological signals that stimulate excess pigment production. Second, it also helps reduce tyrosinase activity, supporting lower melanin production over time. And third, something many people never realize, vitamin C plays an essential role in collagen production. As dark spots begin to improve, healthy collagen helps support smoother, stronger, more resilient skin. So vitamin C isn't simply about making dark spots look lighter. It's also about supporting healthier skin overall. A 12-week clinical study evaluating a pigment-correcting serum containing a stable form of vitamin C together with other active ingredients reported significant improvements in dark spots, overall skin brightness, and skin tone over the course of the study. Not an overnight transformation, but gradual, progressive improvement over time. And that brings us to compound number 1, the one I promised you at the beginning. Something so familiar. You've probably walked past it hundreds of times without ever imagining it could play a role in supporting healthier-looking skin. Compound number 1, turmeric, the bright yellow-orange spice sitting in your kitchen right now. The same one you may use to add color to rice, flavor a curry, or stir into a warm drink. I know that may sound unexpected, but the research behind one of turmeric's natural compounds is far more interesting than most people realize. Turmeric contains a compound called curcumin, and curcumin has been studied extensively for its potential role in supporting healthier pigmentation. Here's what makes it different from everything we've discussed so far. The other compounds on this list influence specific parts of the pigmentation process. Niacinamide helps reduce melanin transfer. Kojic acid helps reduce tyrosinase activity. Tranexamic acid helps reduce inflammatory signaling. Vitamin C provides antioxidant protection and supports collagen production. Curcumin appears to work further upstream. It may help influence the activity of something called MITF, the microphthalmia-associated transcription factor. That's a complicated name, but the idea is surprisingly simple. If tyrosinase is the switch that controls melanin production, SITF is one of the systems that helps regulate that switch, one of the master controllers. By helping influence MITF activity, curcumin may help support healthier melanin production, closer to where the process begins. Laboratory and preclinical research published in journals including Frontiers in Pharmacology has shown that curcumin and related compounds can reduce markers associated with melanogenesis, including lower MITF expression under experimental conditions. Other laboratory studies, including research summarized in the journal Molecules, have reported similar findings in cultured human melanocytes. While more clinical research is still needed, these findings have made curcumin one of the most interesting naturally derived compounds currently being studied for pigmentation. There's something else that makes curcumin particularly interesting. It's also one of the most extensively studied natural anti-inflammatory compounds. Helping support a healthier inflammatory balance may also help reduce some of the signals involved in excess pigment production, not by simply treating what you already see, but by helping support the biological environment underneath. Now, it's important to understand something. Applying raw turmeric powder directly to your face isn't the approach supported by most clinical research. Curcumin is difficult for the skin to absorb on its own. Most of the research is focused on properly formulated topical products, designed to improve both stability and skin penetration. And perhaps that's the biggest lesson from today's video. Dark spots after 60 aren't simply a surface problem. They're the result of biological processes taking place deep inside the skin. The goal isn't to scrub harder or buy a stronger cream. It's to understand the process and choose ingredients that have been studied for supporting healthier pigmentation through different biological pathways. Because meaningful improvement rarely happens overnight. It happens gradually, consistently, and with the right approach. If you found this video helpful, please take a moment to like it and share it with someone you care about. Because this is exactly the kind of information many people never hear until they've already spent years searching for solutions that only address the surface. And if you'd like to continue learning about the hidden changes that happen inside your body after 60, subscribe to the Aging Code. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.